Hi, everyone. My name is Sierra Martinez, and I am the Senior Manager of Digital Marketing and Innovation with Blue Star Families. I'm honored to be with you all tonight and grateful to be joined by Mrs. Nancy Ruttenberg, the Chairman of Naval Services FamilyLine, and Dr. Beth Darius, the Program Analyst for Financial Readiness in the Office of the Military Compensation and Financial Readiness Office. Nancy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Sierra. Thank you so much for having Naval Services Family Line partner with you on this incredibly important topic and very timely topic. Today, we're diving into this topic about flexible spending accounts. We thank Dr. Beth Darius for informing us and making us aware of these upcoming decisions with open season. So we appreciate her time and her knowledge. And again, thank you to Blue Star Families for making this webinar available to all of us.
Thanks, Nancy. I encourage you to use the live chat feature if you have any questions throughout the next 45 minutes. At the end, we will have a Q&A to answer any questions that come through that we have time for. Please also just remember PII tonight. Don't share any personal information within the chat. Just ask general questions and adhere to our community guidelines. With that, I will share my screen and we can get started.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you all for this opportunity while our screen's getting sent up. I am excited to talk to you all about flexible spending accounts and how this can be a great tool for service members and their families. What are FSAs? FSAs are optional, meaning you get to choose them, tax-advantaged accounts that enable eligible service members to set aside pre-tax earnings for qualified health or dependent care expenses. You have the option of two types of FSAs. There's the healthcare flexible spending account, which can cover eligible medical, dental, and vision costs. And then you have the dependent care flexible spending account, which covers daycare expenses for children under 13 or care for incapacitated adults. And best of all, you can choose both to participate in. So why should you use an FSA? Well, the two best benefits of the FSA are one, lowers your taxable income, meaning you will pay less taxes. And two, it helps you plan for known expenses such as childcare or maybe eyeglasses or orthodontics, things like that. But we'll get into that more in just a little bit. Next slide, please. So, who can participate? Members of the uniformed services are eligible to participate. Specifically, members of the regular component or active duty of all uniformed services. This includes all military services, the National Atmospheric Administration Commissioned Officer Corps, the United States Public Health Service, and the Coast Guard. These members will also include reserve component members who are performing active guard reserve or AGR duty, as well as members of the Coast Guard Reserve, including reserve component managers who are performing active duty for more than 180 days. Ineligible members would include those in the reserve component who are not activated for more than 180 days or that AGR duty. This would include if you were a member of the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, U.S. Public Health Corps, members of the United States Coast Guard Reserve. So it's that 180 days AGR duty that is key for our reserve members, but all active duty are eligible. All right, next slide, please. So what is it about a healthcare FSA? We know that FSAs allow you to set aside pre-tax earnings, meaning you're taking this money and setting it aside before any taxes are taken out. For the healthcare FSA, you can use that money to cover eligible out-of-pocket expenses for health, medical, dental, and vision expenses, in addition to what is already covered by TRICARE. So you have things that are covered by TRICARE, but if you have out-of-pocket costs, that's where an HCFSA can help you cover. There are no additional requirements, such as being married, having a child, a specific medical condition, for a service member to be able to sign up for an HCFSA. Next slide. So, how much can I contribute to my HCFSA? As we go into, we're just finishing the 2025 plan year. So this open season means you're signing up for the 2026 plan year that begins January 1st. With that plan, members of the Uniformed Services can contribute between $100 to $3,400 to an HCFSA per individual. Now, that is an increase as compared to last year, so that's why I'm being very specific. For the 2026 plan year, your maximum contribution is $3,400. These maximum elections are determined by the IRS. They're indexed to inflation and change year to year, okay? So think about these things as well when you're choosing how much you can contribute. For an HCFSA, a limited amount of funds will carry over into the next plan year if you re-enroll. For example, you enroll in 2020 for the 2026 plan year. If you do not use all of the money that you have contributed to your HCFSA, up to $680 will carry over into your 2027 plan year should you re-enroll. Again, that is also an increase as compared to 2025 going into 2026. So think about that, because you don't want to have more than that 680 because you would lose money that way. But you do have some availability to have the flexibility to roll over just a little bit. So all funds are available immediately. That means as soon as the plan year starts, in this case, January 1st for our open enrollment season, the entire election is available in your account on January 1st of that plan year for an enrollment during open season. Or it would occur the first pay period after enrolling if you enrolled through a qualifying life event. Then make sure you look at what your eligible expenses are for the year. Does the service member have expenses that are eligible for reimbursement through an FSA? Chances are you do. If both earners in a household are eligible for an HCFSA through their employer, and they each maintain accounts, that means the service member has an account and the spouse has an account with his or her employer, that household can jointly contribute up to $6,800 per year combined. That means that $3,400 per individual, each person gets to do that, which is how you get to the $6,800. So there's a question in the chat pod. Are there any limits if my spouse also has an FSA through their employer? Specifically for HCFSA, it is a combined total of $6,800 or $3,400 apiece. All right. Next slide. So when you're thinking about, well, do I have anything that I can cover under an HCFSA? Well, what are our common expenses that can be covered under your HCFSA? They're medical expenses, dental and vision expenses, even wellness service, prescribed, as well as over-the-counter medications, as well as some healthcare items. You can see here on the list, co-pays, co-insurances, cleanings, x-rays, even orthodontics and braces, contact lenses, supplies, Wellness services could include things like massage therapy, chiropractor, or acupuncture. Over-the-counter healthcare items such as bandages, even pregnancy tests. Those are all common eligible expenses that are absolutely covered under an HCFSA. Now, what's not covered? Common ineligible expenses would include the premium. While a copay, coinsurance, and deductible is eligible, the premium is not. Okay, also not covered: diet foods, teeth whitening or bleaching, toothpaste, toothbrush, or floss, things like cosmetic dental procedures, diaper formula, regular formula, things like that. Now, I've given you a very few of the many, many uh, uh, expenses that are both covered. If you have additional questions, there's an extensive list of eligible and ineligible expenses that can be found at the FSAfeds.gov website. And before the end of the webinar, I'll drop those drop that website into the chat pod for everyone. But we also have additional resources at the finred.learning.gov website as well, which you can see here on the screen. All right, next question. Sorry, next slide. All right, now there are some services and products that you may need and that aren't necessarily covered immediately by an HCFSA. But should you need these things, such as maybe a specific vitamin or supplement, home medical equipment, maybe even support for a learning disorder, work with your provider and they can complete with you a letter of medical necessity. With that, when you turn that in to FSA Feds via your account, and with that letter of medical necessity, you can then get permission to use your FSA to reimburse you for those costs, for those needed things that you have now gotten basically a waiver for. There is a PDF available on the FSAfeds.gov website, letter of medical necessity, that it's a form, fill it out, turn it in, and let it go from there. All right, next slide. Now, you may have heard of paperless reimbursement. Unfortunately, at this time, TRICARE expenses such as point of service fees or co-pays, while they are eligible to be reimbursed through a HCFSA, it is not paperless and it is not automatically deducted from your HCFSA account. However, once you submit a receipt and do that claim via the app online or send it in mail or fax, you will then get the reimbursement. You just got to take a couple extra steps. All right? So, next slide. You may have heard, and we're in the world of the military, so lots of acronyms, lots of similar acronyms. You may have heard of an HCFSA. You may have heard of an HSA. Those are two very different things. So let's be clear. It is important to note the differences between an HCFSA and an HSA. You may have heard as well of an HSA, a health savings account. HSAs and HCFSAs are not the same. A health savings account must be paired with a high deductible health plan, or HDHP. It is a type of medical insurance. TRICARE is not an HDHP, so therefore service members are not eligible for a health savings account. So first of all, with TRICARE, you are eligible to use and participate in an HCFSA, the Health Care Flexible Spending Account. You are not eligible through TRICARE for HSA Health Savings Account. Two different things. As well as, here are some other differences. With the HCFSA, it is a savings account that you put money in up to $3,400 for the calendar year 2026 program, as well as you can carry over up to $680 into the 2027 program when you re-enroll. And you cannot take that money with you if you leave the military service, i.e., if you leave the job, you don't get to take the money with you. You have to use it before you leave. Compared to an HSA or health savings account, that is an investment type account. It has a higher limit, as you can see, $4,400 per eligible person in 2026, as well as it must be paired with that HDHP health plan. It also allows for unlimited carryover, and you can take it with you, okay? So those are the differences. I know it can get confusing, but as a member of the Uniformed Military Services and their dependents, you get to work under that HCFSA. Okay. Next slide. So those are the basics of the HCFSA. Now we're going to look at the DCFSA, or the Dependent Care Flexible Spending Account. For DCFSAs, we have some additional eligibility requirements that must be met. You must have a dependent that is younger than 13 years old, or a dependent individual who is mentally or physically unable to care for themselves regardless of age. This dependent must also be designated as a tax dependent. Note, tax dependency is not the same thing as being enrolled in DEERS as a military dependent, okay? And if the service member has a spouse, that spouse must also meet some income requirements, meaning the spouse must be working, looking for work, attending school full-time, or being physically or mentally incapable of self-care. A DCFSA is intended to help both the service member and the spouse work or meet school requirements. All right, next slide. So, how much can I contribute to a DCFSA? Well, members of the uniformed services can contribute from $100 up to $7,500 to a DCFSA per household. Notice the HCFSA was per individual, the DCFSA is per household. This maximum election is also determined by the IRS, but it is not indexed to inflation, unlike the HCFSA. In fact, the DCFSA, this is a new limit. Last year's plan, it was $5,000 and had been that way for quite some time. So we're quite excited when it got increased this year to $7,500 for the 2026 plan. All right. Some other things to consider for your DCFSA that are a little different than your HCFSA. Your funds do not carry over to the next plan year. You need to plan what you're going to pay in 2026. Your funds are available after they have been deducted for your pay. So if you need $500, you got to have $500 in your account before you can take all that $500 out. Do you have eligible expenses for the DCFSA reimbursement? Do you have the spousal requirements? Your total allowable contribution will depend upon the income of the lower earning spouse. All right, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. As well as you may be eligible to use the child dependent care tax credit, CDCTC. Don't try to say that 5 times fast. And then, if applicable, you may also be able to use military fee assistance and additional child care subsidies. Right, next slide. So we can talk about those spousal. We're going to talk about eligible expenses first. Sorry. So, what are eligible expenses? You can pay for an au pair, babysitting that allows you to work or to go to school, sick child care, before and after school care, a nanny, day camp, preschool, nursery school. Then we also have the elder care, such as adult daycare for persons incapable of self-care. Those are all things that are considered eligible expenses for a DCFSA. Now, what are ineligible expenses? Non-work related babysitting, sorry, no date night. That's got to come out of their different pot of money. Any food expenses, school tuition or tutoring, and any overnight camp. Again, a more expansive list of eligible and ineligible expenses can be found at fsafeds.gov. I've listed a few here, but definitely go check out their website. It is very expansive and very easy to use. Okay, next slide. Here's where I want to talk just a moment about DCFSA spousal considerations. Okay, the IRS rules state that each household can contribute a maximum of $7,500. Again, if you're married, that spouse must be working and earning an income or looking for work or going to school. Now, if your spouse is working, chances are they're going to be making more than $7,500 per year, potentially. If they're going to school or looking for work, they may not be bringing in an income at this point in time or during the year. So we have exceptions to that IRS rule, and this is how they determine how much you are eligible for. So, exceptions to that IRS rule. If you're a full-time student, you do not have to be working. If you're an incapacitated adult, you do not have to be working. However, in both exceptions, the IRS assumes an earned income of up to $3,000 per year for one dependent and up to $6,000 per year for more than one dependent on that income. So, if your spouse's income is less than $7,500, you can only contribute to a DCFSA up to the maximum of the IRS rule, which may be $3,000 for one dependent or $6,000 for two dependents, right? We have a great military spouse guide available at the FinRed website to help you work through some of those things. As well as there's additional consideration if you're married filing separately or if you are divorced because of which parent has the claims a child as a dependent on their tax return. Only the parent who's claiming the child on their tax return can use the DCFSA to pay for those dependent expenses. All right. I know that's a lot to take in, so sit with that for just a moment. Also know we have people in place to help you work through any specific situation that your family may be experiencing in terms of divorce or filing separately, or if your spouse is not able to work or looking for work and is going to school, those sorts of things, right? Next slide, please. Now, we do have some additional tax implications under the DCFSA. or I should say with the DCFSA, not under. As military member, you may be eligible for that Child Independent Tax Care credit. You may also be eligible to take advantage of some military fee assistance, either through on-base child care or local services. You are eligible to use the DCFSA and the Child Independent Tax Care credit and any military fee assistance provided, as long as you adhere to all the IRS guidance on how to use these tools together. But what you need to remember is that each situation is unique, and you should consult with a tax professional to maximize your benefit. You can do that through Military OneSource, or you can do that, talk to a financial counselor at your local installation, at your family center, your Fleet and Family Support Center. Or if you want to talk to someone who's a independent private practice outside the military, you can do that too. But there are ways for you to make sure you can maximize your benefits. All right, next slide. So those fee assistance programs, you may have heard of them. They might be called my child care assistance. They might be through your local center. These programs are treated differently for tax purposes and can be combined with your DCFSA. However, if you're using non-DoD fee assistance, the combination of DCFSA and those non-DoD service member dependent care fee assistance cannot exceed the maximum DCFSA benefit per year. For example, if a non-military spouse of a service member receives dependent care fee assistance from their employer, this assistance cannot be stacked on top of the DCFSA. They're two different things and have to be treated as such. Now, you may have heard of some other assistance programs, such as Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP. Service members may also be eligible for the Basic Needs Allowance, BNA. What about those programs? Well, will the DCFSA enrollment impact your eligibility for other assistance programs? Your contributions to DCFSA are included as part of your overall family's gross income, right? Because it's coming out of your pre-tax pay. Your pre-tax pay is part of what's included in the calculations for SNAP or WIC and BNA. Those impacts will vary based upon the number of family members, your total size, total income, etc. So just pay attention to that and look through. You may have multiple options to maximize your benefit. Maybe it's under DCFSA, maybe it's using one of these other programs, maybe it's using multiple of them together. Again, talk to a tax consultant at Military OneSource, talk to a financial counselor at your local installation, or find additional assistance in your local area. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, want to look through some timelines here. Oh, I forgot this one was animated. Click again, please. Okay, sorry. So let's look through these timelines. Right now, it's November 2025. We have just started open season. It started about a week ago. This year it will occur from mid-November to mid-December, November 10th to December 9th. This is the annual period where all eligible service members can sign up to participate. During this open season, you can select your contribution amount and the number of pay periods that you'd like to make your contribution to be deducted from, so you can balance that pace of deductions. After enrolling in an HDFSA, your full election amount becomes available that January 1st time frame. And remember that you can also carry over up to $680 that next plan year. Go ahead and click again. For an HCFSA, you have up until April 30th of the next calendar year to submit a claim. Now, that claim must be based upon an expense you had during the 2026 period, that planned year, but you have until April 2027 to submit that claim. Click. Okay. Now, the DCFSA timeline, how does that look? Is that a little bit different? Yeah, there's a little bit of differences here. Same open season. We're in it right now. November 8th through December 9th. Now, this is again where you select your contribution amount and the number of pay periods that you want that contribution to be deducted. Go ahead and click. So your DCFSA funds are available after they're contributed each pay period. You can submit claims for reimbursement, or with a DCFSA, you can, if you have a provider who participates in direct payment, you can directly pay that provider. You can change enrollment if you're experiencing a QLE, as well as then remember at the end of 2026, it will be time for open season again to re-enroll. Now, here's where there's a little bit of a difference. For a DCFSA, you actually have a grace period from January 1st to March 15th of the following year to use up any leftover DCFSA funds. However, and then you have until April 30th to submit claims. However, after that 15 March time grace period, and if you haven't submitted that claim by 30 April, then any leftover funds you will lose. Okay, so go ahead and click. Expenses through March 15th, click again, please. And then claims through April 30th. All right, go ahead. So let's talk about how you manage an FSA. Here is that FSAfeds.gov website. Very easy to use. You can see right there, front and center in the middle there, top bar, enroll in a plan. That's how you get to enroll. File a claim right there. Click on there. And then as well as they have a ton of frequently asked questions as well as support available on that website. So your first step as you're ready to enroll now, how much are you going to put in? Determine your annual election. Remember, DCFSA is up to $7,500. HCFSA is up to $3,400, a combined of $6,800 if each person in the household, such as a dual military, could have and contribute in their separate accounts. Is there carryover? DCFSA, no funds carryover, but you do have a grace period. HCFSA, you've got up to $680 carrying over. And then the differences in when are the funds available. All right, go ahead next. So you have to enroll to start saving. This is not a benefit that is, we shall say, immediate, but because it lowers your taxable income, when you go to file your taxes the next year, you will pay less, but still being able to provide and get those things that you need. So you've got to enroll each year at FSAfeds.gov during open season. You can also enroll if you during a qualifying life event. QLEs are determined by the IRS and include the following, such as a permanent change of station or deployment. We experience those often as military members. If you have a change in marital status, birth or adoption of a child or dependent, a change in the child's dependency. For instance, let's say you have a 12-year-old turning 13. we've said that once they're 13, they're not eligible under a DCFSA, but up until 13, they're eligible. So you can do that and use that time up until they're 13 and then change it and stop contributing. Note that if you have a change in child care or elder care, this is a QLE only if you have a DCFSA, not if you have an HCFSA. Again, more information, especially about QLEs, those qualifying life events, is available at the FSA Feds website, and you can find out more there as well for your unique situation. Next step, pay and claim for your FSA eligible expenses. So use it. Get the services you need, get the products that you need, keep that receipt, and submit a claim. Pay for your eligible expenses, keep those receipts. Note that your receipts must have the following information, such as patient's name, provider's name, date of service, type of service, and the cost. You can submit for your claims through the FSA Feds mobile app, the online claim submission at fsa.feds.gov, or you can mail or fax in those receipts to claim. Your reimbursement typically takes about 1 business week to occur, and your funds will be sent via check or direct deposit into your bank account. For DCFSA, direct funds can also be directly sent to your provider using the Pay My Provider options. You get to choose how you want to do that, and that's all managed through your FSA Feds account. All right, next step. If you need to check those eligible expenses, as I said, it's right there at the FSAFeds.gov website. They have links for both the healthcare FSA and the dependent care FSA, so you can check those directly. Next slide. They have an app to make it even easier to manage right there from the palm of your hand. The FSA Feds app is probably the quickest and easiest way to manage your account and submit claims. You can take a picture of it, you can add a receipt, you type it all in right there. Next slide. So, what happens to your FSA account and the funds if a service member separates or retires? Okay. So let's talk DCFSA first. For a DCFSA, any remaining balance may be used for eligible dependent care expenses until the account is depleted or the calendar year ends, whichever occurs first. However, to use the grace period, which is January 1st to March 15th of the following year, the service member must remain actively employed and make allotments through December 31st of the planned year. So if you get out before December 31st, you don't get to use the next grace period, okay? Under HCFSA, coverage ends on the date of separation or retirement. Any eligible healthcare expenses incurred before this date will be reimbursed, but expenses incurred after separation are not reimbursable, even if the participant accelerated any allotments to pay for things. So if you know and can predict the approximate time frame that you might be getting out in the next year, make sure to pay and use your HCFSA appropriately to use all of that money that you may have set aside. All right, next slide. So here's a combined timeline. Just as a reminder again, November and December of any given year is your open season for enrollment. Your plan year is that following calendar year. And then you might have a grace period as well as then your claims deadline. Remember that HCFSA you must use in that program year, but you can carry over. DCFSA, there's no carryover, but you do have a grace period for the first till March 15th of the following year. I know we've covered a lot of information, and as you can see, both an HCFSA and a DCFSA can be used in the plan year to help manage your expenses. However, eligibility guidelines, contribution limits, and dates can differ for those two programs. It's important to plan for these expenses and discuss with a professional to ensure your maximum benefit. Next slide. Next slide. Where can families go to find additional support? So I mentioned tax professionals and financial counselors. Service members and their families have access to mil tax experts via the Military OneSource site, as well as personal financial counselors on your installations. The FSA Fed's website contains information about the program and has dedicated benefits counselors that you can call to talk to via telephone. And if needed, spouses with a power of attorney can also talk to benefits counselors on behalf of their service member. You can see here, you have to have a valid power of attorney to enroll on behalf of the service member. And after enrollment, FSA Feds can allow the service member to authorize access to their account to a spouse or other individual to submit claims or to complete other account maintenance. Those are your biggest sources of help as you manage and navigate setting up and enrolling in your FSA programs. So, next slide. We also have calculators available, one for healthcare FSA, and then they also have a dependent care tax credit worksheet. Both of those are available at the FSAFeds.gov website. Next slide. And lastly, the finred.usalearning.gov/FSA has a number of guides, fact sheets, things to help you work through claims and expenses, as well as frequently asked questions there. All of this is targeting our service members and direct support to service members and their families. And that's what I have for you tonight. Let me check and see if there's any additional questions in the chat pod.